Hey, welcome back to the PetaPixel podcast. I'm here with my Picture Pop and PetaPixel podcast pals, Chris Nichols.
I thought we said no more PP, like letter P party jokes. What's going on?
Did you? I'm just having fun this morning,
right.
and laughing over there. That's Jaron, who just thinks I'm a delight today. Thank you for the support, Jaron.
I was unprepared for how many words you actually were to rattle off there. That was more than I thought you would be able to get out without fumbling. That was fantastic.
Yeah, I couldn't sleep last night, so I've just been rehearsing endlessly.
I was told no more of that. All right. Well, now that I can do it, it's fair game. Let's do it.
All right, fine. Open game for all alliteration at this point going forward. So, some people may not have listened to this podcast before, so we're going to do my favorite game when I open the episodes up. All right, Chris, Jaron.
Yeah.
Which Ninja Turtle do you think you would be?
Oh.
I always liked
That's
Raphael.
easier.
I feel like I go to Raphael. But I think Jaron's more of a Raphael than I am. So
He was my favorite, but I don't think I actually am Raphael.
Yeah.
Jaron's got some tood.
Yeah, I think it's probably more Leonardo or Donatello.
Oh, Jordan's Donatello for sure.
Okay.
What?
The sciencey one?
Wait, okay. Who do you
I'm
think
the
you
party
are?
guy. I'm clearly Michelangelo. I'm fun at a party.
No, you.
I mean,
Okay.
I guess I swing a monopod around,
I'm
so
sorry.
maybe it is Donatello. But
I agree with Chris. It's
do you
Donatello.
What? I don't even understand how cars work. I'm not the builder guy.
This is a good personality test because it really brings out what we think we are and then what people think about us. So
I do actually think
fine.
that you are a good Raphael, Chris, but you could also be Michelangelo.
okay. What, you saying I'm stupid?
I don't even know how to respond to that one. Well, on that note,
Chris is Splinter. All right.
does he count?
I would totally be. That's awesome.
Actually, no, that's Jaron, because sometimes he joins us on our adventures, but
That's
not
true.
often.
But normally
that's
he's just
right.
trying to teach us wisdom and stuff. Yeah.
That's right.
It's like, chill out.
Well, this week we have a lot to go over because last week we had kind of a short episode because we were doing the whole the Samsung thing. So we have a lot of stuff to talk about that has kind of backed up behind us. Oh yeah, Chris is swinging it around right now. That Samsung
it's so
Galaxy.
big. It's so big. I mean,
we
it's
have
the same size as the.
Well, kind of. It's a little taller, right? Anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about that because there's been some product launches in the smartphone space, especially that we want to discuss regarding like what is considered enough to warrant a new model. That's the main topic right now that we're going to do on the podcast today. In addition to that, we got our regular news stories, and then we have a ton of tech support to go through today. There will be no never read the comments because we can't do enough tech, so we're going to cover that. But yeah. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it.
Cartoon.
We would like to thank OM System for their continued sponsorship of the PetaPixel podcast. As most of us here in North America recently learned, winter has officially arrived. It was horrible here in Portland while I was down in San Jose with you guys.
The whole
and I know you guys
suffered.
Yeah, you guys
Totally made the news.
So, with all of this beautiful snowfall, what better time to go outside and learn the incredibly rewarding art of winter wildlife photography? Today on PetaPixel, read OM System Ambassador Art Lifo's 9 tips for photographing wildlife in the winter. In this comprehensive guide, Lifo discusses how he prepares for extreme weather, how he sets up his camera for success, how he captures dynamic compositions, and how he utilizes image stabilization to capture gorgeous photos of winter wildlife. And, of course, since we're talking about winter wildlife, why don't we take a look at some winter wildlife? So I'm going to share with you guys some of his pictures.
I like where we get to see photos on this podcast, except for the people listening, but I'll describe them.
Okay, so what are we looking at here then?
I see nothing yet.
Really?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm looking at a couple of mountain goats.
There we go.
And there's a moose.
Beautiful
and
moose. It's got large antlers. This is a house cat, but it's a very shaggy house cat in the next frame. Yeah, and someone's clearly bobbed its tail. That is
him's tired or screaming in pain. One of the two.
Fox. That's a sleepy fox.
So
beautiful. I like the minimalist. They're incorporating minimalist subjects into there. It's really nice. You don't see that very often.
It's something you can really do in the winter when you got that nice, clean white background. Yeah.
So,
nice.
You guys will typically go outside for your work. And so in the coming remaining winter months, are you planning on doing any wildlife work like this? Like, tell me about the wildlife in the Calgary area. Like, is this something that's possible, or is it just too cold?
Well, this does look quite similar landscape-wise. I'm not sure exactly where they shot this stuff, but it's obviously North America. So we have similar animals here for sure. And people do shoot wildlife in the wintertime. It's a great time. In fact, we just met a lovely person at the airport on our trip back from California, and he comes up regularly to take pictures of owls. He loves owl photography. So he was actually going to the mountains to look for great gray owls. We have snowy owls. There's lots of stuff. Moose, deer, you'll see them out for sure. But yeah, we do brave the cold to shoot our show because that's just, we're great guys that way. We're so
idiots. So many YouTubers are just in studios, just like, hey guys, let me talk about it. No, we go out and we suffer. So
we'll do some in studio stuff too, because it was literally minus 45. That's crazy.
We gave up last week.
Yeah, Celsius, Fahrenheit doesn't matter at that point. Minus 45. Like, you can't be out in that weather for very long. So, but yeah, the weather's warming up. Wildlife photographers are dedicated. You got to make sure you have the right gear, not just photography, but jackets, everything.
Yeah.
Like, you got to make sure you're safe. But yeah, it can be quite rewarding.
Well, you guys, in addition to everyone listening, should go check out Lefo's photos and his tips. Maybe we'll see some wildlife photos from you guys in a coming episode, thanks to these excellent tips.
We shall see.
You can read those on PetaPixel and learn how to get started taking photos of winter wildlife. Click on the link in the episode's description below, right below the like button, or visit petapixel.com and search winter wildlife. Big thanks again to OM System for their continued support, and check out explore.omsystem.com/petapixel to learn more about the OM1, OM5, and the company's incredible line of M Zuiko lenses.
Yeah, some good tellies in there for wildlife.
All right, let's go over some of the news in the last week. While we were in San Jose, Edelkrone announced a $2,600 motorized tripod that weighs 9 kilograms, and Jordan likes it.
We had a bit of a back and forth about it because you're like 9 kilo video tripod, and I was like, that's stupid, from another room. And then I watched the video, and I would never drag this thing around to shoot our show, but for like in studio product work, things like that, it would actually be pretty slick. Like, you can dial in like, oh, I want you to raise at this speed, used in conjunction with like a motion control system on a head. You could do some really cool stuff with this. And yeah, it's an absolute boat anchor, but that's when I want that, because generally we're shooting with like, long lenses. If you could ever see the B-roll that I shoot for the show, I cut out the start and end of it where either the tripod or the table is wibbly wobbling from hitting the record button. This would address that situation. So part of me is like, do I need the largest possible tripod down here in my studio space? So I can see a purpose to it, but no, I would not want to take this thing out in the field.
Well, good,
interface
because
looks cool, fun.
If you tried to take it out in the field, you can't take it near any moisture, sand, mud, anything like that at all. So I don't think it's. I mean, you can take it outside if you go onto a patio, and that was it.
I mean, they're obviously, all their marketing material is from a studio. That's clearly their thing. I mean, I would still take it out. Hey, like, what's the worst that could happen? But
you could break your back. You could fall apart.
Yeah. Oh, yes, that's true.
And the tripod as well.
Correct.
What is very impressive to me is actually like how low it can go. For we're talking like a big setup, but it can get down like 35 centimeters up to 148 centimeters. Americans, you could do the math, and it's that's a serious amount of versatility in the studio. It's quite impressive.
Well, I've linked to it in the description of the video here, as well as on the audio only, if you're interested in take a look at it. It's also called the Tripod X, the Edelkrone Tripod X, if you want to Google that and try and find it for yourself. If you're interested in looking at this extremely expensive brick, you said boat anchor. I like
Yeah,
boat
boat
anchor.
anchor.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, except you can't take any moisture.
Except you can't
sand.
get wet. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
no.
Fine.
Yeah.
Right off at that
So
point.
it's a terrible
I
boat
just want to
anchor.
shoot. I want to shoot an interview with this, and then just start it like slowly moving and see their reaction to this thing, like
It looks pretty cool
on its own. Yeah,
I bet
I
it's
imagine
I
it's
don't
quite
believe it
quiet.
makes that sound.
Yeah, quite quiet, quite smooth. Yeah,
pretty
very
cool.
cool.
All right. Let's kind of pivot to smartphones for a second, because those are indeed cameras.
Yes.
Most people will know that while Apple gets a lot of the press, they haven't typically been the number one smartphone brand in the world. There's others that have taken over a lot of Android phones, and typically up to this point, it's actually been Samsung smartphones have been the most popular. Well, according to a report from the International Data Corporation, Apple has taken the top spot from Samsung in smartphone market share for the first time. This marks the first time since 2010 that a company other than Samsung has held the position, and the first time that Apple has ever been number one. To give you a little bit of context for what that means, so in 2022, Samsung owned 21.7% of the entire global smartphone market. Apple was at 18.8%. Last year, in 2023, Samsung fell to 19.4%, and Apple increased its share rather significantly to 20.1%. Of all single-name brands, Apple is now the number one selling smartphone brand.
Yeah, I think it's kind of crazy because I've always kind of just perceived iPhones as like premium smartphones, you know, like it was a little bit more costly, but I think they've also just hit a threshold where, you know, a lot of the older models are still available and very capable at this point. I think that's really a big part of why we're seeing this tipping point with them right now.
I think it's marketing. I mean, Apple has always done such a great job marketing their phones. You know, I mean, people talk about them like they're a cult. I mean, I've done that too, but you know, that just goes to really good marketing and really good dogma, for lack of a better word. And I'm really enjoying my Apple phone. I am. And I think one thing we have to keep in mind is, although all smartphones are competing against each other for your attention, Apple is a different universe than all of the other Androids, right? So Samsung has to, like, as an Android user, I enjoyed the freedom. In fact, that was part of the appeal for me of the brand, to go from a Samsung phone to a Sony phone to a Google phone as I needed to change phones, right? So you're not necessarily staying brand loyal with an Android, at least I didn't really. With Apple, undoubtedly, like, you know, once you're into that ecosystem, you're basically in there. It would take a lot to then pull you out of it, just because of the way the OS is designed and how different they are, how they function different, the apps that you get used to. So I think that's also a big part of Apple's success. There's nobody else competing in their realm with their OS.
Yeah, by design.
By design.
Yeah, if you look at the market share, like the interesting thing would be, it sounds like, oh, Apple's on top of the smartphone world. But if you compared, you know, iOS devices to ones running Android, obviously Android just absolutely crushes it.
Although it's still a fifth. I mean, that's incredible. But yes, absolutely.
Yes. I was not expecting this, mostly because even though iPhone is very popular here in the United States, I don't know about Canada, but in the United States, it's very popular. Internationally, it has been not that way. So this is a global shipping number. So they are improving. And according to the report, Apple was the only company that actually saw an increase in sales despite an overall decline in global smartphone shipments. Barely got that out last year. So Apple was the only company who felt good about 2023, and even then it wasn't that good of a feeling. I think overall smartphones were just not as popular. People are, I think, either tiring of them or feeling like the ones they have will last longer than.
I think that's it. It's saturated. People have good phones already. You know, they don't need to upgrade necessarily. But also, I think it's important to remember that Apple really has their claws into the influencer crowd, and that's huge. Like, I would really want to see the stats for what do creators typically have, and I bet you that would be like 70% Apple. You know what I mean? Maybe more. I don't know. Yeah.
I also think it has something to do with Apple's new marketing for the last couple of years, which has been, if you don't have an iPhone, you will die alone in the woods of starvation or exposure.
Or heart
and I think that's a very effective message.
And if you buy an Apple, you'll be celebrating many happy birthdays to come with your family. Like,
that was a I know exactly the commercial you're referencing. They opened the show last year with that, and
it was very well produced. It was very well produced. Very
typical
well
Apple. All right, last news story to talk about today. Well, second to last, because I got one more thing I wanted to ask you guys, but it's not really news. So this is actually news. Last night, very late, we published a story where we got some of the most candid responses out of a camera company I think I've ever seen.
It was like a Sigma interview, the level of like actual opinions and speaking openly.
Real answers, yeah. So Nikon discussed the whole Z mount, the challenge, and basically admitted and explained why kit lenses are the hardest for them to design. And then also, like, we asked, like, what would you like to see? And we heard from this designer, his name is Koichi Yoshida, that these are the things that he would like to see Nikon make.
Actual answers.
Yeah. Like, what is the Z mount missing? Gave those answers, but I want us to focus on one thing he mentioned. If he could dream of anything, he wants to see the Noct lens turned into a series of lenses. Wow. So what are your, let me see if I can find the exact quote. Okay, so he says that he would like to expand the Noct lens into a series, including an ultra-wide Noct and a 200 to 300 millimeter telephoto Noct. Quote,
interesting.
The ultra-wide Noct would be ideal for live view shooting of meteor showers or auroras, while the telephoto Noct lens would serve as an astrophotography tool for capturing short-duration moving comets. I imagine that these lenses would offer unprecedented shallow depth of field and unique bokeh, providing distinctive and exceptional image rendering even for regular photography. This is his dream. What do you guys think? Would you see this happening?
I mean, the big question for me is, are the Nocts staying manual focus only? Because if so, then that 2 to 3 becomes a little bit less compelling for anything outside of, like they said, astrophotography of comets. But an ultra wide angle, stupid bright lens, like I know in the comments some people were saying, like, you know, a 20 millimeter f1.2 or something like that. Yeah. Hell yeah, that'd be amazing.
That would absolutely make sense. Yeah. Something corrected specifically for night photography and astrophotography would be really nice. And, you know, I think a lot of other manufacturers have kind of stolen some of the thunder from some of the big companies in that regard. You know, a lot of the Rokinons and Samyangs, they've done a really good job. Sigma, of course, we love. So yeah, it's that totally makes sense. It's neat to hear him want to expand that. And it's neat that it's like, you know, the Noct and then the Plena, now that we've had it, really kind of always seemed like optical designers' wet dreams, where they're like, look, not everybody's going to buy this, but go for it anyway.
Look what we can do.
Yeah, it was a flex. I mean, the 58 mil was straight up a flex, right?
Yeah.
Especially at the time when they released it. So yeah, I it's nice to see that they're excited. I mean, that's really nice. It's just an optical company being like, hey, we're excited to make new stuff. This is what we're dreaming of. This is what we want to get out there. Instead of the usual like, oh, you'll see. Just stick around. We'll let you know. It'll be great.
We cannot comment about things that we are not currently releasing. That's my favorite is we can't talk about unreleased products. So, by the way, this is just part 1 of this interview. Part 2 has, like, this is just lenses. Everything else is in part 2. And those answers are also just as candid. So we're publishing that later this week. We'll talk about it next week on the podcast. But like, highly recommend anyone who's interested in like the thought process of a lens designer, of a camera engineer, to go check out this story. Again, it is linked in the description. Very good work. I'm really pleased to see that Nikon, it took them 2 months to get these answers back to us, by the way.
Good for them. Like, you know, ride that 50-foot wave of momentum, man. Cowabunga, dude. I feel like a pizza. I haven't had any breakfast.
I was like, are we going back to the Ninja Turtles from the intro?
Really go for a big pizza right now, bro. Yeah.
I would say this article featured radical honesty.
Last thing before we go into the main discussion topic, I wanted to get your guys' take on other YouTubers who have decided they don't want to do this anymore. There have been enough of them to get, and Marquez Brownlee, MKBHD, did a video about this as well. And that's kind of why I wanted to get your input, because you do this too. You've been doing this for a very long time. And are you guys also going to quit YouTube?
Well, and our good friend Caleb Pike, I mean, he actually released a pretty heartfelt video saying, you know, the things he's dealing with and what he's struggling with, and that he just can't really do it anymore. So, I mean, it's what do we want to say? Like, it's a great job. It's not an easy job. And there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, not just the physical stuff, especially us, like, Jordan and I have always really endeavored to get out in the field. That's been a big part of our stuff, even though it is more work and, sometimes conditions aren't great. But I do think that that's actually a big part of why we still enjoy what we do, because we're not always in a studio. I never really saw the appeal personally of that for me, where if I'm sitting at a desk the whole time doing every review from the desk, I can't do it. So getting out in the field is a big part of it. We get to go on adventures. We get to see new things. We get to try stuff. But at the same time, also, there's a very big emotional toil that it can take, not just all the bad comments, although those can get to you, but just the massive public opinion, the time it takes away from your family. There's a lot to it that, any job, has challenges, not just physically or workload, but emotionally as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things I wanted to mention. We are very fortunate. One thing I didn't realize that I actually really need, that I have had actually in all of our YouTube work, is a team. I really enjoy, it's great that Chris and I are working together all the time, but it's also nice to have someone like Jaron, or, back at DP Review, we could run things through the editorial team, or back at the camera store, have other staff members come over and hey, watch this. Is this stupid? Is this funny? Is this interesting? Yeah. I really enjoy that dynamic. And I mean, we do hear all the time, why aren't you guys on your own? This is a way that I really enjoy working. Absolutely. But one thing too, that I haven't heard many people mentioning is, of course, comments can be a real up and down. I've got pretty thick skin about that at this point. The big one, though, is if I have a video that I put a lot of work into that underperforms, I'm in a bad mood. My wife will attest to this. I'm bummed out for 48 hours. I remember specifically when the Blair documentary first came out and did nothing. I think it was 9 of 10. On YouTube, they rank your performance compared to the last 10 videos. And I was in a terrible mood, just refreshing it on my phone. Constantly hoping that it would suddenly turn a corner. And thankfully, it eventually did. But it is... if you're on a downward, like Caleb mentioned specifically, not a lot of hardware announcements where he's getting those huge numbers, it can just wear you down after a while, make you feel like you're not doing a good job. So, fortunately, we always tend to have kind of an up and down, a little bit. The Samsung, our initial video for having something out day of launch was pretty underwhelming, but now the full review is doing fantastic. So my mood is good again, and I'm chipper.
That's tough, Jordan. And I know he that's a thing for him. It's quite difficult. I really try not to associate my well-being with our views, right? Or how a video is performing, because it's tough. You could start looking at analytics, and then you're seeing up and down charts, and all of a sudden you're a day trader and you're just losing your mind and screaming at people. So
you can waste a day to it trying to figure out why people didn't like you.
You gotta stop doing that. You gotta stop doing that. I mean, really, I do like to go through the comments, and I want to say one thing, I like to go through the comments as opposed to look at analytics. And I know that people they're always oh, don't look at the comments. So we, never read the comments, but we always do. But although there's a lot of criticism and there's a lot of negative stuff out there, I think people really underplay the good comments that we get. I think people are really designed to kind of focus on the bad, oh, that really gets you down. And we actually get a ton of support. We really love our viewers. We love all the support we've had. A lot of people who followed us for over a decade, right? And so I really try more just mentally. I'm I'm going to focus on those comments, look at those comments too, take them all together, because it's easy to forget about that and just say, oh yeah, that's nice, but oh, look at this guy, he calls me a liar, right? And oh, that's nice, but this guy says I'm a terrible photographer and I should go do something to myself. So
you mentioned YouTube does a very good job of, and our viewers do as well, of self-moderating. If you go onto a video and you actually look at the comments in the order that YouTube presents them, they tend to be much better than if you were to just immediately go in and just read the most recent ones. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. One other thing I just want to quickly say is if you ever see us out working, come say hi. Just if you watch the show, I know a lot of people I hear all the time, oh, I don't want to bother them or whatever. A lot of the time it can just make our day to catch up with somebody who enjoys the show.
I mean,
don't ever feel weird about that.
Yeah.
I think that's a benefit of you guys going out too, because you'll run into people. I told them, and when we were in San Jose, at least once per day, if not multiple times per day, they were getting recognized, and they would have conversations with people who have seen their videos in the past. And I could see genuine joy on at least Chris's face. Like I don't know if you were as happy, Jordan, but you know, I can't tell.
It can be a lonely job, especially if you're doing it just by yourself. And I get it too. I mean, it's a repetitive job in some cases, you know, and it really depends on how you like to do your reporting, what kind of videos you like to make. I mean, that's why Jordan and I sometimes we just want to make a silly video or a funny video. And a lot of the times that's for us. And I know it can be hard when Jordan's like, it's not performing very well. It typically doesn't. I mean, gear reviews will always dominate as far as engagement goes. But sometimes you just got to do that. I think a lot of professional photographers and videographers also feel that way, where they're like, you know, if you're doing commercials day in, day out, or corporate headshots day in, day out, sometimes you just got to go do something for yourself, reset a little bit, do a fun project. It's very important. And I could see how the daily grind, especially in our business where you don't get a fixed schedule, you know, it's feast or famine, right? Like sometimes we're just overworked, slammed with 100 releases. And then we have months where I don't know, what do we do a video about? What
I would kill for one of those months. Please.
Right now you could
be one of those months where I'm like, what am I going to do?
We're very busy.
I haven't had one of those in a while.
We're very, very busy. Well, thanks for sharing.
But not going to quit.
Yeah, that's what I was about to just ask.
We're doing fine. We're not going to quit. No, we're doing great.
I also asked them that in person, you guys aren't going to quit on me, are you? And they assured me that they're sticking around.
But that's the thing too. It's a great dynamic where we just went to San Jose to see the Samsung S24 release, and we have Jaron with us, and you know, we've gone on road trips together. We've done all these things together, and it's very important for us to have that dynamic, and it does let you stay on top of the work. I think we make better products when we have that support, but also, just to be around each other and have fun and have those little breaks and just kind of go relax and have a meal and stuff. That's stuff that maybe a lot of other YouTubers don't get to do as a team. And so, that's why we choose to work with a team. And I think it's the right decision.
That's why I put so much emphasis on when we're not shooting, when we're out, making sure that you guys are having a good experience.
Yes, you're very good.
You took some pictures, and there were whole segments done at the winery that I took them to called Clos de Vol in Napa. And that sort of thing I think is really important for mental health and continuing to make good content, is to just feel good about what you're doing when you're not working.
You mean booze?
Yeah.
Yeah. That 84 Cab Sav didn't hurt. That was fantastic.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing, guys. Appreciate it. Yeah. Let's move on to let's talk about this concept. Is it enough by itself to see either just software or AI features in a new smartphone or camera or whatever? Is that enough to warrant a new model, in your opinion? And the reason I ask this, as you guys know, I'll let the audience know why I'm asking, is because Samsung's Galaxy S24 Ultra had basically no hardware changes. The only major hardware change from the camera perspective was actually losing the 10x zoom and going down to a 5x zoom, right?
You say it so negatively.
But they improved the screen too. The display is much nicer. And the case for it is also a different material, and I think it's nice too. But as far as just pure camera goes, it's all AI software stuff. So,
right.
Do you think that's enough?
I mean, I think we have to separate cameras and smartphones in a way, because they are very different devices. Because we look at a smartphone, and there's so much to look at on them. I mean, they're mind-boggling, and there's still a lot to learn. But we try to really focus on the cameras and the lenses as opposed to all the other stuff. I mean, Samsung did update a lot of their translation software, their handwriting to text, their ability to format conversations or change the tone and mood of your notes and your speeches and stuff. So, I mean, there's a lot of that there that we kind of just were like, well, we're not talking about it because that's out of the scope of our video. At the same time, I think phones are kind of on this yearly recycle path. I mean, honestly, did Apple really do that much with the 15? I mean, we got a new
wasn't
lens.
much in terms of hardware.
Not much in
I think
terms
the
of hardware.
processor bump made a huge difference with that in terms of a lot of the functionality. That did seem to be the big thing there. I mean, I think we can just kind of divide it in terms of what's happening on device and what's happening off device. I think Samsung's is much less compelling when they're saying, like, you know, fire those images off to our servers. We're going to then generate something generally badly that it can paste into this image. And a similar thing with Google. And I'm sure so much of this functionality could be done on older devices because it's not using the camera's hardware in order to do it. So in that case, that's not very compelling to me. If they do, you know, say like, hey, because of this new Snapdragon 8 version that we're running, this lets us do generative fill on device without having to access the cloud or do it quicker or something like that. You know, if that was the case, then that's much more interesting to me. And I think that can very much justify it because like Apple's new processor unlocked a lot of, you know, being able to do portrait mode in any photo in post if it generated a depth map, you know, allowed it to do some of the video capability. I still think it's stacking more than 2 video frames per frame in order to get the dynamic range that thing is recording. And that all seems like processor, that seems like hardware to me, where Samsung's like, you know, if you move this person into the air, we're going to throw it up on the cloud and then, again, generate something. The results aren't great at this point, and it is going to get better.
Well, that's before Chris jumps in here, that's the part I actually want to touch on because I'm confused about this. So if there's anyone listening to this who could maybe explain this better, because I'm not getting an answer out of anyone that from the companies, but like if you look at our examples and I've linked to the review so that you can actually see the picture outside of YouTube. But there's one that Chris took of like he tried to move a guy away from a bench into the middle of a room, and that came out horrible, like truly bad. Like it looks not right
Nightmare
at all.
Fuel.
Yeah, it's not good. The person that he was standing near is now a blob of mess, and like so it's not
with
good.
3 feet.
So like the idea with 3 feet, with the idea being that this gets better over time. How is this getting better? How is that going to happen? I can't tell it that they did this wrong. And like the other thing too, like the reflections, they didn't work nearly at all. You can't tell it. There's a reflection here, and your correction is bad. Mm-hmm. So like, how is it learning? How can it possibly learn if I'm not telling it did poorly?
So isn't that why they want to do cloud-based stuff? I mean, you can look at it nefariously, and yes, I mean, like anything, they want to collect a lot of data. But
how would the cloud know? How would the cloud know that it failed?
Because I
wonder if it sends something back that says like, if we choose don't save after it gives us something, if it's saying like that's a negative. But yeah, I totally like there should be a little like Google Maps, you know, how did we do today?
Bad.
But they're looking at the results.
Frowny face.
The engineers are looking at the photos. They know.
You
know
that the engineers are going to look at the millions of attempts?
No. They're looking at the shots that they've taken and they're like, oh, this really isn't that good. And they're like, hey, we found like 3 instances where it was pretty effective. Let's put that in our presentation. But, you know, clearly they're trying to collect data. They're trying to find out how can we improve this? It is going to get better. I mean, the question isn't, did they do a good job? The question is it enough to warrant a new model? And I think, yeah, I mean, in the smartphone world, sure. I mean, Google did the same thing. They absolutely did improve their hardware. That was hardware.
Nice. They did the most this year of the 3 companies and actually.
But next year,
hardware.
Are they going to? Probably not. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I feel like we're always stuck in this every year a new phone kind of world. That's the way it is. And like you say, people are maybe holding on to their older stuff because a lot of people are going to look at this and be like, I don't need the generative AI, or I'll wait till it's better. And that's perfectly valid. But at the same time, you want to start collecting data. You want to start getting examples. You want to be able to learn from the photos that are going through the cloud. And I'm sure they're absolutely analyzing the photos that are going through the cloud that you submit, if you choose to submit it. They'll also give you an option if you don't want to submit them, right? Yeah. But no, I mean, it makes sense why they're doing it to me and how they want to improve the product. And the potential is very interesting. Apple has to date not really chosen to go in on that, right? And maybe they will at some point at all, but they might, or they want to keep it just camera based. But, you know, Samsung did improve the portrait mode in a big way. I think
that's neat
much
that
better.
you actually tested that, because it's like
And
they mentioned
the camera's
it not
faster.
at all.
The camera's faster. The AI processing through cloud was way quicker than the Google Pixel Pro 8 Pro. So, I think there are benefits here that we're seeing. Time will tell if that's something that people are really going to key in. That's the question. Is the community going to start playing with these features and say, oh, this is cool, I find this useful? Or are they going to play with them and be like, this is janky and gimmicky? That we still have to see, but you got to put it out there to find out what people are going to respond to.
You made mention, sorry, Jordan, I wanted to jump in quickly. He mentioned something while we were out. It's that I wanted to bring up, which is like the whole reason that they're probably doing their own backed up versions of this stuff rather than using existing AI tech is very likely the idea that legally it's kind of hinky right now. So like if they make you agree to their terms and conditions, and now they started taking all the pictures that you're sending because you agreed to it, they are now insulated from possible litigation, which is maybe why this isn't as good as some other stuff, is because they're starting from scratch. If anyone, that's your theory, right, Chris? And I kind of agree with it.
Well, that would make sense, right? I mean, well, we'll see what happens. How much are they're obviously using a lot of Google's technology, but how much of it is going to be theirs?
Well, Gemini, the thing that's at the core of a lot of this, which is Google tech, the way they actually made it is like you can use Google's database, or you can take Gemini and plug it on your own system and feed it your own data. So you're only needing to license the actual AI, and the database itself can be specific to anyone.
I mean, look, Adobe's generative fill sucked when it first came out. It only worked on fence posts and skies, right? And it's already gotten better. So yeah,
Adobe did the same thing. They used their own library of licensed, like, because they own stock footage. So they had a lot more data to start with. Samsung's even, I would say, in a worse place because they don't have that. Worse starting point anyway.
So everybody's rushing to collect as much data as possible and make the product better. So yeah, I think... for cameras, I find it actually more disappointing. I'm not so disappointed by a phone every year because, they do make changes and you kind of ignore a cycle. With cameras, we have seen sometimes where a camera comes out and it's been 2 years and, a lot of them can be just basic evolutions or minor changes. So, and I think AI is a perfectly good reason to launch a smartphone. Sure.
I just keep going back to the original question, which was like, is it enough, specifically with the Samsung event? And one other thing that we're seeing a lot is like, is it exclusive? Because I would say like a quarter of the presentation was about Google features that are already available in the Pixel 8 and Pixel 8 Pro and are probably going to roll out to everything that runs Google software, which is all smartphones in the future, as long as the processors can handle it. But like circle to search and things like that. I mean, that is something I do think Apple might have a leg up on, is generally when they're talking about a feature, it is something that is exclusive to their platform. And I'm actually curious because I didn't watch the Pixel 8 press announcement. I'd love to go back and watch that and see if there were similar things where they were really flaunting features that were not exclusive to the Pixel.
Yeah, but the alternative is don't release a phone, right?
Yeah.
With any of this technology. I mean, so I guess what I'm saying is, look, I'm not saying is the S24 a revolutionary device or anything. No, and in a lot of cases, it is optically very similar to the 23 Ultra. Although I do like the 5x zoom personally. I know I'm probably in the minority there, but you have to get your foot into this door and show that you're competing and show that you're using the same kind of capabilities, or you do nothing.
If they do nothing, this goes back to a news story we just covered, they will continue to lose market share.
Right.
I can't remember. I could be wrong. I could be misremembering. But I felt to me like there was a time where Samsung actually did skip a year with the Galaxy S series phones. And that felt weird, even though I'm now complaining maybe that there's not enough on this. You also can't afford to skip a year. It just doesn't look good for you. So worth thinking about anyway.
We did it. We had a conversation.
Yeah, Jordan, I have a question. Why do you think video on Android is so not good?
And there were some interesting comments about how like some of the core functionality of Android like might just be cooked into the operating system, like the variable frame rate thing I've been lamenting. Someone said like, no, that is like an aspect of Android that's baked right into it. I do wonder if that's the case. I also feel like, they're almost letting, like, it's not, if that's a huge priority for you, I think so many of those people are going to iOS because it's had that reputation now for like 5 years of just like, if you care about video, iPhone is the place to go. I wonder if they're just like, look, we're not going to get that market anyways. Let's dump our resources into things like photo or,
AI,
smart AI features that can actually move the needle for us a little bit more. I wonder if that's the case.
It's so strange to me if that is true, because a lot of early content creators who are like just deciding that they want to do this are going to use their phone to make video content, without a doubt. If whether or not that's on TikTok or Instagram or on YouTube, they need a camera, and if the camera is not fantastic, it just seems so strange to me. It's just a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
So. I mean, Apple did so much in the back end of their phones, which is very impressive. Like, they had the same conversation with us where they're like, it's difficult finding the balancing point between how advanced you make your product and how many people in a small minority will appreciate that, and then how you actually make it accessible to the everyday person who just wants to have fun with it. And Apple has actually, ironically, it's like they've made their phones very entry easy, like, low bar kind of stuff to get into. But in the back end, their technology has always been there. It's like, but if you use the right app, you can unleash like havoc on the world creatively, and it's amazing. Whereas like other manufacturers seem to kind of been on the same token where they're like, we're gonna cater to the everyday user, which makes sense, but we're not gonna worry about like any future proofing for any more advanced stuff going down. And again, there's a lot of Android phones out there. Everybody has a different approach, but I mean, Apple, man, they were like, why not have a phone that can do really nice cinematic video? Not everybody's gonna use it, but why not?
Jaron, can I request immediately a line of T-shirts that say "Unleash Havoc on the World, creatively"? Period. I'd wear that.
I'll put that on the list. We're thinking about merch right now. So if you, by the way, anyone listening to this, if you have suggestions on who a good merch partner would be, like for clothing, basically, please let us know. It is the wild west of trying to figure out what a good option is. So if you've got ideas, share them.
Right.
On that note, let's move on to what have you been up to, Jordan?
Oh, I'm going to pass this week. I went to a Samsung launch, and then I came home and edited, and then I'm doing a podcast. So, Chris, your turn.
Again, it's been the Samsung launch. I mean, so what I've been up to is enjoying. So I had an 84 Cab Sav at Cordova. That was amazing. What else? Went to.
Did you not go to a tropical island off the coast of Spain?
I did not. No. I went to Din Tai Fung in San Jose, which was better. Yeah, that was wild. Hey, the whole sort of thing about this trip to Lanzarote off the coast of Africa, which is amazing. I would love to go there.
Is it off the coast of Africa? I actually don't know where it is. I just said Spain.
Yeah. It's off the coast of Africa.
Am I wrong?
Northern Africa, Northwest Africa. No, it's like pretty close to shore, relatively speaking, but beautiful islands. And I think Nikon did an event there before. But there's a lot of talk. Oh, Z6 III launch, Z6 III launch.
Africa.
And Nikon, it is off the coast of Africa.
Yeah, I did not know that. I have no idea where this is. You go.
And and Nikon Rumors had a big thing about it, and it was funny. All I did, and this is nothing, I did not try to start an S storm at all. I just posted the Wotancraft bags that I take traveling, and again, I'm not paid by Wotancraft to do that. I just like their bags, so I post it from the airport because that's what we do. I mean, we're going on a trip. We're like, hey, off on another trip. It's something I've done many, many times before. And everybody assumed although it was just my photo, and I think Jared pulling in an airplane bathroom. And I like my photo.
There were 2 YouTubers who went on airplanes, and everyone lost their minds.
Yeah. I think it was the Z6 III launch. Unfortunately, there wasn't, and if there was, I'd be really upset that I wasn't invited. So, but no,
don't worry, Chris. I can 100% confirm that there was no Z6 III launch on an island off the coast of Africa.
Yeah, I mean, they might have had an event.
Nothing. They did have an event. I believe it was like one of those like Sony does these too, where they'll do like an influencer event where they just like show like all the stuff that you could use if you were shooting Sony and try and woo people onto the platform.
It's like a condo event, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a condo
set up a bunch of cool shooting experiences and stuff.
Yeah.
And this was play with some gear you might not own.
Gorgeous.
Correct.
I'm sure it was amazing. I would love to go there.
I think it was wedding themed. That was what I've seen so far, which, that sounds cool or whatever. This was a very specific Nikon Europe trip that they were working together on. I don't know if they paid for people to go to this or if they just said you can come, because Sony doesn't always pay, but they do say there's an event here you can make content and see it and sort of thing. Yeah. But like there was no new product there.
And then I posted another photo, which was just like a nice palm trees in front of actually quite a beautiful sunset, because California has gorgeous palm trees. I don't know.
So the difference is that one was done specifically with the objective of deceiving the people who are
you were trolling, Chris.
excited about.
Don't pretend you weren't. I was there.
I was just documenting. Yeah. Anyways, that was a little bit of fun, but
you were making me sound quite a bit while you were doing it. So I'm inclined to believe.
Oh yeah, you don't get off the hook there.
But that's what I was doing. So I was drinking wine and having amazing dumplings, and getting caught in a rumor storm.
Okay, so I actually did something, and you guys, I showed it to you. You did. The beginning of it, I finished it.
Damn, that's hours of work, hours and hours and hours.
Yep, this is Strike Rouge. Come on, camera. Come on, EOSR. Don't look at my face.
Strike Rouge sounds like a nice perfume.
It's not going to do it. It's what I find interesting about this particular model is it has so many weapons, but the pilot, lore-wise, never uses a single one of them. She doesn't want to engage in conflict. She gets in it as like a symbol and says stop fighting. But she's got like some of the coolest weaponry. Anyway, I'm very pleased with this build. It's my second favorite build.
I feel like Gundam mechs are built in a way which, like, militarily is completely impractical. Like, not just to mention the walking mech, which would be awesome. I'd totally be all for that. But so much stuff to get blown off. Like, it's just like little bits and pieces and wings, and it's crazy. And
well, without that wings unit, this one wouldn't be able to fly.
Yeah, but someone's going to poke their eye out.
You got to be able to fly.
Yeah, and if you shoot it off, they fall to the ground. Yeah.
I like Robotech because that was always a little bit more like serious and nitty gritty war
Chris
machines.
Went on, I think it was like a 15-minute talk at me when we were in San Jose while Jordan was editing about how I should watch Robotech. Yeah. And
there'd be no Gundam without Robotech.
That's true.
And there'd be no Battletech without Robotech. And there'd be no Mech Warrior without Robotech. I mean, Robotech that's the granddaddy. Although there was probably something before that.
Sorry to get us again.
GoBots.
Derailed. I bought more models, by the way. I've completed all the ones that I've done. I've got more coming that I'm going to.
Are you going to have a whole museum?
I really hope so. It's what
was the chapstick for?
So the picture I sent Chris and Jordan showed like my work desk, and there was a chapstick on it, cherry flavored, if you must know.
Yeah,
and it was. I made up some reason where it's like because I do so much mouth breathing while I'm building that I need to keep my lips from becoming crusty. But the real reason was my wife found it where it wasn't supposed to be, and she told me to put it away, and that's where I happened to be at the time.
Because I thought it was like some Gunpla trick, like it's like you lubricate the parts,
slide the pieces in.
Or fill in file marks or something. Anyways, I was very disappointed to find out you were just messing.
Okay.
That's some technique of the master builders.
Yeah, I'm not a master builder, by the way. I just, I don't paint them and I don't do the extra
But you build
stuff.
master grade Gunpla, so
I do build. I want a perfect grade one now, and that's going to be very expensive.
Master grade EX.
All right, we're going to move on to tech support because we have a lot, and a lot of these came in December. So if you hear anything that references like the New Year and like Happy Holidays or Merry Christmas, apologies because they've been sitting in the queue for a while. So we're going to start our tech support with Peter from Berlin. This is an email. Let me read it aloud to you guys. Hey there. First of all, I would like to say that I really, really enjoy your content and show. There is nothing out there to which it can be compared in this form. Wow, that is a very nice compliment.
See, that's what we got to appreciate. Those comments.
These are the ones. Yeah. I have a question for you, which is non-technical, but rather tackles on aspects of the ethics of all of us when it comes to the photography and video. We all experience a massive influx of computational techniques and methods of image alteration at the ever-increasing speed and depth. Finally, initiatives of authenticity identification are starting to make their way into the high-level domain of photojournalism now, which was long overdue. But what should the rest of us in the image-generating community take from this? Should it not be our mission now to also actively enter into a discussion what we can or should do to label, categorize, or identify images and videos as authentic? Should we invent a new genre or classification of pictures as authentic photography, in quotes? If so, where and how should the lines be drawn beyond dodge and burn and crop towards, in quotes, computationally assisted pictures? What do you think? Thanks for your input, Peter, Berlin, Germany.
That's a great question, Peter. Yeah, and definitely one that people have to talk about, and you're going to find, I think, a lot of people on different sides of the fence. If I'll go first, what I would say, I absolutely, for photojournalism, I think there's always been a standard for that. But otherwise, I've long since jumped off the old man, yelling at the clouds bandwagon about editing photos and how far that can go. Because first off, to me, if we're talking about photography, even commercial photography or artistic photography, you're already abstracting based on what you choose to frame. And then on top of that, we've always edited our photos, changed color, contrast, sharpness. And so I just feel like what we do today is kind of an extension of that. There, obviously, we get into things like, okay, what about deep faking or, using people's faces and stuff. And again, that's where it's really scary, is the sort of like social media platform where it's like the wild, wild west and people just post whatever they want out of context. And I don't know how to solve that. I don't know, probably the apocalypse is the only way. But as far as artistic photography goes, I'm all for generative fill and moving a person over, and somebody in the wedding parties, their eyes are closed, so you put like open eyes on them. I mean, I'm fine with that personally. And do we have to market that way as being edited? I feel like it's implied. So I'm a little bit more generous with, I think that's allowed, that's okay. Even if it is in a commercial sense, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is why we've seen the resurgence in film photography a lot of the time. And, people like not editing it, just like, here's what came off the roll. And I think we're going to see, especially now with the content authentication initiative, the CAI thing, I do think we're going to see that as kind of a badge of honor a little bit more. Like this is based on one. The one thing I keep going back to is Chris was on a podcast where this subject came up and said it's called photography, where you are capturing photons of light. If that is what you're doing, then I think that is justified as photography, even if you do some editing afterwards. And that's why I also consider smartphones. It is taking a whole bunch of images and smooshing them together, but it is actual light that was captured and combined into an image. Yeah. It's when something is, like Chris was saying, deep fakes or something where it's not based on anything. That's not photography. Even the people who consider themselves like AI artists or something, that's a completely different thing altogether. Sure. So I'm always just going to look at photography as, was light captured by you? And if that's the case, then yes, absolutely. I'd like to see, if you're trying to misrepresent something, some way for that to be shown, But yeah, that's the way that I'm going to look at it, if that makes sense. And again, to go back to the original question, yes, I think there's going to be a huge resurgence in the interest in unedited photos in the next several years.
And that would be cool. I think that would be awesome to have sort of galleries or competitions or whatever that are based on unedited photos, and CAI will help with that for sure. At the same time, I remember when do your clients care? And I don't think they do, right? Does the average population care? Not really. Remember when everybody would do Instagram posts and tag hashtag no filter? Nobody does that anymore. They're like, nobody cares. They like all the shots that have filters anyway. So I would say I agree. It's fun to see that people are doing it. Definitely there has to be conversations. Definitely there should be expectations put in place. And then I think obviously with journalism and stuff, rules put in place. But otherwise, art is art.
All right. This next one is probably going to take a little bit of time. This was sent into us late last year by Wolfgang Moo. It's an email, and it's got a lot of bullet points. So we're going to try and go through these. It's got 2 sections and at least 8 bullet points. So here we go. Dear PetaPixel team, I want to tap into your technical expertise. First major bullet point, teleconverters. Apparently, some lenses accept the use of a teleconverter better than others, i.e. with less degradation in image quality. Looking at lens reviews, I get the impression that some lenses accept teleconverters better than others with less effect on image quality. Will a lens with a better image quality rendering when used without a teleconverter always result in better image quality when used with a teleconverter compared to other lenses without a TC having inferior image quality?
Oh,
So, I mean, yes, absolutely. Some lenses are going to work better with a teleconverter. The two things that you're generally going to see, first of all, central sharpness is obviously of absolute importance if you are using a teleconverter on those, which is why, hey, check when we zoom in on the charts for our shots. The other one is if light starts bouncing around in those lens elements, it's going to be exacerbated with a teleconverter. So if it's a lens where you do see a loss in contrast when shooting towards a light source, that is generally going to be worse with the teleconverter. Less contrast is less perceived sharpness. So those are the two things to really look for. We're not going to put a teleconverter on every lens to see how it performs, but you can infer a lot from that.
But I think the other part of the question, though, really is like, I think what they're asking, that's why I'm kind of confused. I'm reading it carefully. I think what they're saying is, would a lens, like a good quality lens with a teleconverter, which degrades the image quality, how would that compare to another lens without the degradation of teleconverter, but starting off an inferior image quality? Like, is a pro lens with a teleconverter still better than a cheaper lens without a teleconverter?
Yeah, it's going to be a case by case.
That's case by case for sure.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. I mean, nowadays I would say affordable telephotos are actually quite sharp. It's hard to find like really bad ones. And the light loss could be similar given that you're using a teleconverter on the better lens. At the same time, though, I do feel like there's a case for the more expensive lens has more versatility when you buy a teleconverter because you can still get good image quality, get the reach you need, but also then take the teleconverter off and then get noticeably better image quality when you are within that range.
All right. Next section.
There's a lot.
When shooting a concert, I wanted to show the entire orchestra sharp. The depth of field I needed required f8. A shutter speed of 1/60th of a second was limited to avoid motion blur. It was quite dark, and my metering system, Auto ISO, brought the ISO up to 12,800. While the scene was generally captured fairly good, the various spotlights produced highlights which I could not remove in Lightroom, even reducing the highlights by 100%. I thus decided to use exposure compensation, minus 2/3, thus settling on a reasonable compromise for saving most of the highlights, and then in Lightroom I lifted the shadows where it was needed. Can I trust that my camera, a Nikon Z6 II, is fully ISO invariant, or will it make a difference if I shoot with a higher ISO versus shooting with a lower ISO and then lifting the shadows where needed? Any other solution you would have in mind in dealing with the described shooting scenario? I also tried the Nikon highlight weighted metering mode. While that worked fine for midtones and shadows, I had to do heavy lifting of more than 1.5 EV. Does it make a difference whether I use the mechanical shutter with or without electronic first curtain versus shooting in silent photography mode only with the full electronic? Will the dynamic range be different? Holy cow, there's a lot in here.
Is everybody
love
else
this
following
topic.
this?
I could talk about this all day.
Well, I mean, yeah, sure, go for it. I mean, it's ISO invariance is not the case here.
So essentially, we've been saying for a very long time, what cameras should do is when you're shooting in high ISOs, they should shoot at the second gain step and then just boost the shadows up to give you the exposure. Like, if you dial in like 6400 ISO, your camera's second gain is 1600, it should just boost the exposure by 2 stops. The reason for that is you're not going to clip your highlights, and that's exactly what they're talking about here. Now, the Z6 II is very ISO invariant. It is not perfectly ISO invariant, but that means, you're looking probably, and essentially what that means is, do you get the same level of noise if you shoot at a high ISO or if you shoot at a lower ISO and bring the exposure up afterwards?
I just learned something.
So with that camera, yes, it is very close to ISO invariant. Like I would say within like a third of a stop difference. And for me personally, it is so worth having the extra highlight information. I'm willing to pay that cost with it. So I would do, he said like the highlight weighted metering dropped the exposure down 1.5 stops. But if he's shooting at 12,800, it's metering it out properly, then I'd say that's a great decision that the camera is making to protect those highlights. Bring that exposure back, 1.5 stops. It's going to be noisy, but 12,800 ISO is going to be noisy as well.
Okay, but Jordan, just to clarify for people though, I mean, he shot at 12,800 ISO. That's not the next step for ISO invariance on that camera, right? I mean, Ideally, he'd want to shoot at a somewhat lower ISO. Then the exposure goes darker anyways, the highlights protected, then bring that back up. Right?
Exactly.
Shooting at 12,800 ISO and underexposing your shot and then bring those shadows up, that's not going to do any benefit.
No, lower your ISO to...
You got to lower your ISO.
To set that.
Yeah. To take advantage of
that's going
ISO
to protect
invariance.
your highlights.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, there are some cameras like the Fujifilm GFXs. They do it the way it should be done. Essentially, if you look at their dynamic range charts, it just hits a certain threshold and it stays there, and the shadows will just get progressively noisier as you push things. I want to see that on all cameras going forward. It's very easy to make that invisible in raw processing software. So that's how cameras should work in the future. Yeah. The other thing he brought up, mechanical versus electronic shutter. That is a sensor where it's dropping the bit depth in order to increase the readout speed. So if you're shooting electronic shutter, you will get more noise at those extreme high ISOs.
So
stick to your
don't in this
mechanical
case.
shutters. Yeah,
Ideally
absolutely.
not. Yeah.
Look at you guys. You took that mammoth question and you destroyed it.
Just gave it a noogie and oh man, yeah.
I mean,
All
the only other thing I would add is like sometimes you just got to make decisions where the highlights. I mean, stage lights. Would I worry about trying to get them back? I don't know. It depends if the highlights are going onto any other parts of the photo that I really want to protect. I mean, I would still make a decision most important for your subjects.
All right. Next one is from Blake. This is a speak pipe, so let's listen in.
So I was reading the article on PetaPixel talking about photography gear that isn't really used anymore. And the first item on there is Pocket Wizard flash triggers. And that kind of shocked me because I work in a photography studio that still uses those like ubiquitously. We have like 24 of them. It's kind of crazy. And that makes sense because we've been open for like 30 years. So it's just what we've always been using. Why upgrade? But it got me thinking about like flash photography in general and why there isn't more information about it on YouTube. Like there's no videos talking about budget flashes or how to use flashes. I know you guys use Westcott, but there's gotta be a dozen other brands. And I just want to know why there isn't more content about that on the platform.
I remember when Pocket Wizard was like the thing.
When we were at the camera store, it's just you'd see the sports shooters come in and be like, "Oh, they're grabbing another 4 Pocket Wizard plus 3 transceivers today."
Transceiver, I love that word.
They were good, but they weren't great. I mean, they had all sorts of issues. I mean, yeah, this is a good question. I mean, as far as Pocket Wizards go, I know that's not really the context of what they're asking, but like the market opened up, right? There was so many better transmitters starting to be made, and they kind of got swallowed up. And then manufacturers started making TTL capable radio transmitters. I know Pocket Wizard did as well, but manufacturers start releasing flashes like Godox, right? Would have flashes with built-in. Yeah, and
that's
TTL
what started
transmitters.
The end of Pocket Wizards when they started to build them in. I think the company I think it's Mac Group that owns Pocket Wizard or attempted to build them into their strobes as well, like their studio strobes, to try and keep Pocket Wizard going. And that I remember when that launched and it just did not take off. But but
they were great. I mean, they did their job. Why aren't people talking about flash photography? It's honestly because cameras have gotten so much better. Dynamic range has gotten better, editing software has gotten better, and I think a lot of people have always been maybe a little scared to use flash. And
bingo.
If you're scared to use flash and it's confusing, and it can be, absolutely, it takes a bit of knowledge, takes a bit of training to use it properly. If you're scared of it, you're just like, well, why don't I just bring up the shadows in post? And you absolutely can in a lot of cases, right? There are still, of course, the benefits of actually adding light in low light situations where you absolutely need it or want to get better image quality from it. So I think there's a resurgence, and honestly, flashes are easier than they've ever been to use before. So that might be why not a lot of people are talking about it. I mean, we try to talk a little bit about it. Maybe we could do a flash tutorial. We did one 12 years ago?
15 years ago.
I don't believe that the basic tenets of that video would be different today. Flash.
No.
Outside of the Alpha 9 III,
basically the same. But yeah, even in the A9 III video, we're talking about all these different factors with now global shutters and how you make it work with flash. And that was taking us right back to the old days. Where we're like,
we'll be talking about because that video is not done yet.
Oh, it's not done yet, but it's coming
out. I think you nailed it, Chris. One other thing is they don't perform. People don't want to look at lighting products. We've seen this over and over. It's something I'm very interested in, and it's never worked great for us. So
and then
we
Jordan
found
gets
it's
really
much
upset.
Then
When he sees,
I
it's
go
like,
into a downward spiral
Yeah.
and consider making a thumbnail of my head down on a desk saying I quit.
and then we all have to bring him
And then
back
Chris,
up
and then I have to hang out with Jaron to cheer myself up again and get ready to YouTube some more.
have some wine.
It's
Yeah,
like kind of the
tough.
same thing with bags. We don't review bags anymore because they just don't move the needle. People do care, but apparently they don't care enough about individual brands to make it worth it. The only thing that makes sense is doing roundups to cover a bunch of stuff. So
We did a roundup video a long time ago for TCS TV that did really well, but that was actually a good one because it was also fun for us to do as well. But we'll see. I don't know. Flash tutorial.
I really like the idea. You've been doing it a little bit, Chris, of just working that into existing episodes. Just like when we mentioned the Westcott flash or something like that. But might be worth just throwing a couple other bits of advice, tips, things like that. Because I do think most people, I worked at a camera store, they're so intimidated by strobes.
Yeah.
Like the number of constant LEDs that I would sell, because people are like, I can point it at someone and visualize how it's going to look. And strobes aren't actually that difficult. So it's a huge way to have a major advantage over competing photographers is understand lighting.
How do you think Chris makes such good portraits of me? He's using strobes.
Go, right? Yeah, we often take them out. They've been great. I mean, the Westcotts really have been fantastic lights. And I think the most important thing that anybody needs to remember about flash is nothing to do with really, adding light and stuff like that is such a rudimentary thing. It's really more about you have a light source that you can control, right? And when photography is all about light, the real beauty of flash and the real strength of flash is having light that you can control. As beautiful as your scene might be, unless you're getting epic natural light, there's always going to be something missing. So why people really get into flash and why it's worth learning it is because you now can create directionality and light and change the look of the light. And that is such a powerful thing to have. Always has been.
All right. Moving on. This is another speak pipe from Eric. And this one is basically for me. They've speak piped us before, but this one's for me. So let's listen in.
Hi guys, it's Eric again, the guy with the A6000 and now an A7C. This question is directly addressed to Jaron. Now, I know you're a big Gundam fan, and I am also kind of am. However, I have just watched Gundam Wing and the Endless Waltz OVA. I would like to know in which order I have to watch the series to actually reach the Gundam Unicorn. Thank you in advance.
I'm just going to play on my phone here.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jaron.
I'll be quick. So Gundam is broken into different universes. You were serious. You're on your phone.
I'm just checking views. I need to know what my self-esteem should be like right now.
Gundam Unicorn is part of the UC timeline, the one that I am least familiar with, which is ironic considering it is the core of Gundam. That's like the main storylines are in there. In order to watch Unicorn, and I had to look this up, you have to watch a lot. It takes the original one that's like you have to go back to is from 1979, the original Mobile Suit Gundam. However, if you do not want to watch that, if you're like me because you don't like watching old things, I have a problem. I know I suck.
Ugh,
they remade that recently. It's called Mobile Suit Gundam: The Origin. It's on Crunchyroll. That will get you all the way, I believe, up to Zeta. It might not cover Char's Counterattack, which is another one you have to watch. I would say you need to watch Mobile Suit Gundam. Then the next one would be maybe Stardust Memory. Then all of Zeta. There's 2 of those. Then ZZ. Then Char's Counterattack. And then you can watch Unicorn. Right. I am also on this journey with you. I will probably be starting this soon once I'm finished.
Confused.
But there's just a lot, unfortunately. So the answer is it's not easy to get straight into Unicorn. And I know Unicorn is popular.
You could just watch the Robotech TV series from the 80s, then watch Macross Plus. It's an amazing OVA 4-part series. Fantastic.
It's not going to get him into Unicorn.
Or you could just forget all of that and watch Pat Labor 1 and Pat Labor 2 because they are works of art.
Our next question is from Joe. It's an email. Hello, PP professionals. I'm a newer shooter who started shooting wildlife stills and short clips, mostly birds and squirrels, with an A6400 and the 70-350G this fall. I wanted a second body so my fiance could shoot with me as well as with me as well, and got a used G9 with a Panasonic 100-302 based off of Chris's recommendation from an older video. And with the money I paid, I'm very happy to shoot both interchangeably. With tax return season coming up in the US, I am looking to make an upgrade. My question is, would you get the Sony 200-600 for the A6400 or the Panasonic Leica or Olympus 100-400 for the G9? Or make a body upgrade and therefore also have to buy another lens?
Oof.
I have thoughts.
Good question. I mean, the Sony 200-600 is a really nice lens. It really is. And you are losing a little bit of range to the Panasonic 100-400 for the G9, but you're getting the larger sensor. I mean,
my inclination, just because the autofocus is better on the 6400, I would lean in that direction. The 2-6 is a brilliant lens.
Yeah.
It's worth pointing out your camera doesn't shoot. It's capped at 10 frames per second. I would really take a look at the Sigma 150-600. It's substantially less expensive. It's a great lens that you could get at a little better price there. So that would be my suggestion. But if you're thinking maybe of moving to like a stupid fast camera, that is a class of camera in Sony, then the 2-600 is obviously more future proof because you'll get tracking at faster frame rates.
Yeah, beyond 15 frames per second. I mean, you already have 600 millimeter equivalent on your Panasonic G9. It's a great kit, and I appreciate that you enjoyed the recommendation. Hopefully you're liking it. So yeah, upgrade the Sony. I mean, with wildlife, especially if you really start getting into it, I know it's tough because you're trying to bring both of you along in this journey, but having the right gear, really pushing that distance further, that'll make a big difference. You're not getting much reach with the 6400 and the 350. So yeah, 200-600. Your eyes will open. Your 900 millimeter dreams will come true, at least equivalently in full frame.
The difference between a 350 to a 600 versus going a 300 millimeter to a 400 in micro four thirds, that's a big gap too.
Huge.
All right, we're going to get a couple more of these done. This one is from Bob in Tasmania. Let's listen in.
Hey guys, Bob here from Tasmania. I'm not sure if this is a tech question or never read the comments, but, well, is it just me, or are all Fujifilm lenses kind of slow? I mean, I'm having a look, and f2, yeah, lovely, but then you add in the crop factor, and it's suddenly not that quick. Any thoughts? What am I not getting? Thanks, guys.
You're not wrong, Bob, but I mean, they're still pretty fast. I think Fuji really want to kind of keep their lenses still fairly compact, and that's kind of the beauty of that system. They do have some fast primes. I'm not sure exactly what range you're looking for. Like, are you trying to get telephotos that are faster? I don't know. I think they do okay. But yeah, they're not the fastest out there.
I would love to see some Fujifilms where they're making equivalent to like the same kind of depth of field you'd get with faster zooms. Like specifically, I'm thinking of the old 18-35 f1.8 for APS-C, those DSLR lenses that Sigma made, the 50-100. I'd like to see something like that from Fuji, where if you want a zoom with that full frame kind of depth of field, it's available to you. I mean, like Panasonic makes the f1.7 zooms in micro four thirds that really fill that as well. I think that would be a great thing for them to cover. And they do have some faster lenses if you want extreme shallow depth of field. We really like that 56 1.2 version 2. Mm-hmm. We did not care for the 50 millimeter f1. Just a lot of Loca issues, kind of optical limitations there. Something wider would be really nice. Yeah. I'd love to see like a 23 millimeter f1, f1.2, something like that. Or, that's a 35. So Chris, some other focal length. Would be great.
I just like, there are certain situations where you absolutely need that. I just feel more and more, I'm kind of going to the camp of not needing that fast an aperture. Like I'm shooting a lot of f4 lenses on full frame now and perfectly happy. I like it. Like, but I get it, Bob. I get it. If you need that look, Sony's, especially their zooms, they don't really give you that fast aperture. Some f2 zooms would be great. More
Sony or
f2.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Fujifilm.
If we could make one lens for Fujifilm right now, we wish it appears, and it's good, what would it be?
I don't know, 60 to 180 f2. That'd be cool.
That sounds hard.
I'm thinking like 16 to 35 f2 would be really open up that system to
That'd
do
be
wide
fun.
and shallow.
What would that be equivalent to?
That would be a 24 to 50
2.8.
f2.8.
2.8? Oh, that sounds useful.
F3 technically.
But Jordan always wants the exact same lens.
I just want a 10 to 25 Panasonic in every map. Give me a 20
wants
to
the exact
50.
same lens that he has in other formats. Yeah, that's.
Is it really asking that much to get that in every? I don't think so. I think it can be done.
No.
All right.
But
last question. We actually got through a large chunk today. I'm really pleased with this. This is the last one that we're going to do. And the reason I moved it up, I don't know if you guys are watching, I moved it up because this one does specifically reference last year and like Happy New Year. So I wanted to play that because I said it. But this is from Kevin
Happy
Adam.
New Year, listeners.
Kevin Adam on SpeakPipe. Let's listen in.
Hi, Chris, Jordan, and Jaron. I hope my message reaches you before the holidays. If so, a Merry Christmas to you. It's Kevin from Scotland here again with my second voice question for you guys. Recently, I've become quite interested in large film photography, more with an interest in the technical side as much as anything, and I've no immediate intentions of rushing out and buying one. Question for you guys related to both mirrorless and large format. Depth of field can be a constant struggle, particularly in genres such as landscape photography. To increase depth of field in the digital world, we can stop down the lens or we can focus stack, but both have potential issues in image quality. For large format film, in addition to the aperture, the front and rear standards can be tilted to increase or reduce depth of field and also to correct for some perspective problems. This appeals to me as it seems a more optically correct solution, less tainted by artificial manipulation, if you like. And so to the question, as most mirrorless cameras now support in-body image stabilization, would it not be possible to build almost a simulation of a rear standard style tilt into the image sensor and therefore gain the same optical benefits? If this hasn't been thought of before, I'm claiming copyrights and patent pending. Have a great new year, guys. I look forward to seeing where you take the show in 2024.
Well, Kevin, sorry it did not reach us before the holidays, but we appreciate your question anyways. So yeah, actually be able to manipulate the sensor with the image stabilizer. You're not going to be able to move it to the same degree as you can do back movements on a large format camera. And then of course you'd really have to couple that with movements on your front lens as well. That's the beauty of large format, is that you could lay down your depth of field in such a way that you could go from the grass in front of you to the castles, and the locks. I assume that's all you shoot. Locks and castles and hills in behind, and you don't
bottles
worry
of
about
whiskey occasionally as well.
Yeah, barrels of whiskey. And you don't worry about the loss of depth of field up in the sky above you that people are going to see anyway. So, that was really neat how you could lay down that depth of field to maximize your perspective control and stuff. I don't know that image stabilizers could move the sensor in such a way as to really make a big deal there. But tilt shift lenses, absolutely. And I mean, Fuji have just released their new tilt shift for the GFX line. I cannot wait to play with that. I think that would be awesome fun. But again, more for perspective correction than really depth of field. You have a little bit of control there. Or get a large format film camera with an incredibly affordable digital back, right? What are they, like $8 now?
I believe there's one. We did a story on it a few years ago. They actually made a true large format digital back, and it is mammoth.
What, 80 grand? I don't know. I don't even want to know.
Yeah. Well, most of those scan we complain about rolling shutter.
Yeah.
This is a whole other level with those.
It doesn't even shoot video because it's not worth it. Yeah.
But Kevin's
Roberta
just shooting
Bondar
castles and locks and mountains and grassy fields.
You mentioned whiskey. I don't know. Have I told you guys about I love Scotch personally, and I assume that's what Kevin here also likes because he's from Scotland. I have
that is an ethnic stereotype, Jaron, and
I'm from Canada, but I only have poutine like 3 times a month.
All right. Well, I apologize for the ethnic stereotype. Well, I like Scotch. Kevin. If anyone else likes Scotch, tell me your favorite Scotch. I have a large collection upstairs, so I'm always looking to add to it. So,
you need to talk to Richard Butler.
No, that's the best Scotch.
Isla is my favorite region of Scotch. I like the burn tire.
It is all our favorite region, but Cool Isla is a fantastic distiller.
Well, on that note, I'll take that recommendation, Chris.
Yes.
We're going to call it for this week. Anyone who we did not get to, I promise you, they're in the hopper. We will get to you. And then next week, we have lots more to talk about. More stuff coming to the channel. Lots of exciting things. Thank you again for joining us. We would love to see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.